And welcome once again to WrestleTakesMania here on 411mania.com. Before I forget, always subscribe to 401 Mania's Wrestling and Entertainment YouTube podcast network, where they've been launching so many great podcasts. I'm sure you've been paying attention to Dissecting Dynamite after Dynamite every Wednesday. There's also My Big Break. I want to make sure I get all these names right, so I'm reading them off here. Yeah. They're 411 on Wrestling Podcast. The one that I was most interested in was they have the 411 Wrestling Interviews. The newest one, they interviewed Richard Holiday, who, Eric, you and I know from MLW, used to team up with MJF. So
the Dynasty.
The Dynasty, exactly. An MJF-led faction that was in MLW for quite a long time. But we are WrestleTakesMania. I am Joe Martel. He is Eric Mutter. He is the cult icon wearing the Habs Go toque today. Did you cut off the pom-pom, or is that actually there? There it is.
It's right here at the top. I did this for you right here. This is for you here.
There you go. Yes, for those who haven't been watching, I am from Montreal. I used to follow the Habs, and then around 20 years old, I just got fed up with the politics. Anyone who follows hockey, the English-French BS that goes on there. I stopped caring, and I put all my sporting energy into UFC and WWE, and then eventually Impact and everything else that came out since. But
well, if it means anything, a lot of people have, forgotten about the Habs in the last 20 years or so too.
Well, it's definitely the Stanley Cup has since '93. They've forgotten about that.
Vincent Damphus, ever since he left, it's been all downhill.
Of all names to go with him?
Because he was a Sharks guy. He was a big name on the Sharks when I was a kid.
Oh,
that's I always go there. I know John LeClaire and Patrick Waugh were there as well.
Of course. Well, Patrick Waugh, he basically won the cup for the Canadians. They didn't have much of a team, but they had the best goaltender in the league at the time.
Possibly ever. It's like the two best goalies ever are him and Ken Dryden, both played for Montreal.
Well, when it came to Montreal, they had a really good screening process back in the 70s and 80s, obviously, when Blau was picked up. Their coaching staff was always very strong. And when it came to Dryden, I don't know if my timing is off here, but here's how much I used to know about hockey. They used to pick locally, and Quebec is really well known for their hockey for youth. And so the way it was working, it might even be in the original 6 era, but you would basically draft from your own area, and it's hard to beat Quebec for where you're going to draft. So unfortunately, that's why Toronto Maple Leafs haven't won anything since, was it 67 or whatever?
Yeah, I think Tim Horton was still alive and not a coffee guy at the time.
Yeah, I'm in the Toronto area. I'm outside literally, but I am an hour away from Toronto, so I see nothing but Leafs and these types of colors, and I couldn't care less.
But enough of Hockey Takes Mania here.
Very well put. We have quite a bit to talk about today, and we want to switch things up because normally we talk about Raw right off the bat. And we are going to get to that, but I wanted to switch things up because there was some pretty big, interesting news with the releasing of Zelina Vega. And while in itself, the release is not huge news, she hasn't been a major part of the TV show over the last couple of months. The reasons why she was released is pretty massive. Over the last couple of years, we've heard a lot of pushing for more rights for the independent contractors, also known as the wrestlers in WWE. There's been talks of unionization, and that all really wraps up into what happened here. I don't know the Twitch story all that well, so I'm going to get you to inform me a bit of this. But basically, as we may know, Vince McMahon made an edict that no performer under the WWE banner is to have a Twitch channel or make money off of it. And he shut everyone down. And it definitely wasn't a popular decision. And that seems to be stemming where this came from. I think it sounds like she started pushing back and talking about unionization on Twitter maybe an hour before she was officially released. And then all of a sudden she was let go. And the consequences of this one is going to be pretty huge because there's definitely a lot of people that are going to be upset about it within the company, whether independent contractors or employees. We'll get into that in a second. Her husband being contracted with WWE is going to be a factor because he's definitely been, in my opinion, one of the top prospects. So I don't know if that's going to change now. Basically, give me the feedback that you've seen through Twitter, that you've seen through reading the news, because this isn't the sort of story that I tend to follow. But what's been going on with Twitch, Zelina Vega, and everything else involving that gaming network?
So the Twitch thing is pretty much how you described it. I think it was in September, mid-September. It was reported that Vince, WWE, they wanted all the wrestlers to shut down or get off Twitch, all third-party affiliates. So not just Twitch, that Cameo thing, which Big E was big on.
Right.
I don't think YouTube necessarily, but I'm not entirely clear on that one. The main ones were.
I think you're correct, because if that was news, I think Xavier Woods would be one of the more upset people. He was definitely upset from Twitch, but he's made a lot off the YouTube.
Well, he's fine because he and WWE have a deal already. Okay. His up, down thing is part of the WWE affiliate, so he doesn't have to worry. It was mainly Twitch and Cameo. I think maybe OnlyFans as well. OnlyFans is going to be a big part of this story in a minute.
Yeah.
So they wanted everyone to shut down. There was some conflicting reports about how talent could keep it if they did it under their real names instead of their gimmicks and such. But ultimately, I think some people in NXT may be the exception. I think a few of them still have it.
Oh, okay.
But in October, they were told you have to get off, regardless if you're using your real name or your gimmick name. So she was one of them. And
she had the OnlyFans thing that she launched just a couple of weeks ago.
Just a couple of weeks ago. AJ has stopped. A lot of people blame him for this because he was on there, saying stuff about Paul Heyman and all this.
I think that's what it comes down to, yeah.
Cesaro had to get off. Paige
get off Twitch, by the way. Let's clarify. Yeah. They don't want to get off. They had to get off Twitch.
Get off Twitch, yes.
We don't want to distract ourselves with some X-rated talk.
Yes, this is a PG show. Yes. Paige has not. Paige is still on Twitch, but she's not technically a wrestler anymore.
Yeah.
And she obviously has not been thrilled about this either, if you followed her. So she may be rebelling and may be on the way out herself for all
There's a lot of people upset over it for a variety of reasons.
Yes. So
obviously, when you're going to upset, even if I'm not on Twitch, I'm seeing my coworkers, whatever their employment title is, they're upset for what seems like pretty legitimate reasons. It all came out of nowhere, and no matter what, we're going to have a pretty good discussion about this, but no matter what, WWE's handling of this has been terrible. Whether they're right or wrong, we're going to get into that, but just a foot down, nothing going to happen. You're not allowed whatsoever. Horrible idea, and I could definitely see why there's going to be revolt amongst the wrestlers in WWE.
Well, not just that. I mean, by all accounts, Zelina was really well liked back there. I mean, we both think highly of her.
Right.
More so as a manager than a wrestler. She's not a bad wrestler, but I wouldn't say she's a top-rate worker. But as a manager, she saved Andrade's career there.
In a lot of ways, absolutely.
In a lot of ways, yeah. She did a lot for Garza, I thought, and she should have done more, but they kind of mishandled that thing at the end, I thought.
Right.
At least. She had a lot of potential. By all accounts, everybody really liked her. There was a role there. It's not what I would call a huge loss from a quality standpoint, but it is a loss. It is a talented performer you're losing. So from that standpoint, I was just completely thrown. And yet, regardless of whether you agree with WWE or not, this doesn't make any sense right now.
No.
Because, I'm sure everybody has noticed there's changes going on in America right now. There's a new administration coming in, one that is possibly going to include Andrew Yang, who, as you've seen, has been very vocal about the independent contractor status within WWE.
Right.
And the rights these wrestlers do and don't have. So you would think if you're WWE, you would want to keep a low profile during this. And releasing Zelina right now, when you've got all these eyes on you, and you've got all these people talking about this issue, the most they have in years, that is not a good idea. You want to keep a low profile here.
But that is something very Vince McMahon-esque. We've seen this from the beginning of any of the controversies, whether it's when he took over from his dad in the 80s and the way he pushed the buttons with everyone. Not that it was mainstream news the way these types of things can be today, especially with social media. But he never cared about ruffling feathers. That's never been a worry of his whatsoever. Then obviously with the steroid trial. and then going up against WCW and everything else, it's fine. The controversy will create cash, as Bischoff once wrote, and Vince will really take advantage of that. The problem is, in this case, especially with social media, with fans being as upset as they are, right or wrong, pushing the buttons of the media or other promoters is one thing. Now you're pushing the buttons of your own employees or contractors, and that's a different story. That's when we're running into a lot more trouble. So definitely 100% agreed. WWE's handling this is terrible. No matter how you look at it, the fact that there hasn't been any discussion of a compromise, of any solution that would allow anyone for some possible solution on this one. No, all thrown out the window. Vince McMahon put his foot down. It's down to zero. No access to these programs or apps whatsoever. And now everyone is furious. The way I looked at it at first, because I have a very outside view of this. This is not the sort of news story I follow because it doesn't affect what I watch on the TV. That's what I'm always going to be concerned with when I read a dirt sheet report. But in this case, what upset me about it was that if, like, Zelina Vega would not be allowed to get a T-shirt made with her name. We want to make that precise. The Zelina Vega name on a T-shirt and sell it without WWE's consent. She couldn't sell it on her website or PWTs or anything like that. She would have to do that with WWE's permission, and they'd get a cut of the profits. So I can understand them having something to do with Twitch if they're booking off of that name that was created through WWE. But as you mentioned, we're not just talking about under their own name or their WWE name. You're talking about their personal time under their real name. And that's where you're going to get a lot of issues. And while I am definitely not someone that would vote for Andrew Yang, as I am not American, first of all, but I don't follow that. I don't follow either wing of politics. A center viewpoint of this one. There's going to be trouble no matter what, no matter who's in charge. There's going to be pushback, and it's going to be loud and boisterous. And I really hope McMahon knows what he's in for.
Well, are we sure it's going to be loud and boisterous? Because, I mean, you and I have talked about this often. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up again, because there was a lot of outrage from fans, you know, on Friday when she was released hours before Smackdown.
Right.
She was backstage getting ready for the show.
And told
when she found out. And right before it was announced officially, that's when she released that tweet. So that was very smart on her part.
Definitely.
And, you know, so yeah, there was a lot of outrage. What were the ratings for Smackdown?
Well,
the same as they've been.
But that's not the sort of pushback we're talking about. This is a sort of social media pushback where it's going to build. It's going to go over time. And I think the more this is going to, because there's going to be more complaints, there's going to be more people that will come out against them. I don't know if it's going to be massive. Maybe that's not the word I should be using here, but it's going to be bigger than I think Vince is ready for. Is that a fair way to put it, maybe?
I would like to believe that you're correct there, but I'm very skeptical, because when push comes to shove, fans after a while tend to look away from these things. And the talent here too. I don't have any faith in any of them, you know, other than maybe her husband here. I don't know what Aleister Black is going to do or not. I mean, there's been reports that he wanted to go back to NXT and it was declined. So clearly he's not thrilled about his situation even prior to this, but who knows? He might just decide to ride it out. And I just don't see anybody else speaking out. When push comes to shove, over the years, the talent has, you know, forgive me for saying this, they've been cowards. They've been cowards over this. I'm reminded of the story Bret Hart tells in his book where Vince called a meeting and he asked them to air his grievances, and Bret did. And Vince then got uber defensive and was like, "You're the only one saying that." And Bret was then like, "Who else here is with me?" And only 2 guys of like 100 wrestlers raised their hands. They all looked at their feet. And then afterwards they were like, "Oh, thank you for speaking up, Bret, but I didn't want to lose my job by agreeing."
It's understandable. I wouldn't call them coward. I know what you're saying when you call them cowards, but I wouldn't call them cowards because their jobs are at stake. And while WWE has the competition from AEW, there's no guarantee that you're going to have the same benefits that you have in WWE. I'm not talking about just money, but right now it's not like Tony Khan can sign everyone who wants to leave WWE.
No. And he shouldn't either.
No, and he shouldn't, you know. And then a big one that I was reading was like Tommy End, Aleister Black. That's someone that if I was AEW, I would definitely want to pick up because of the potential. He's got the youth. He's got an international following from being, is he Danish, if I remember correctly? So he's.
I think so. Yeah. Dutch, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So he's got a big European background, and that's something AEW is very good in the US. I'm not saying they're struggling in Europe, but they'll want to grow at some point, and that would be a good way to do that.
Right. They've talked about doing a show in the UK when the pandemic's over.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. So there's so much potential out there for one person. I can't say that for everyone else. Like AJ Styles, obviously, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere. He's probably on his last contract, no matter where he goes. Cesaro, if he were to leave, I could see him doing something, but he's still pretty up there in age. I don't think he has that many years after whenever his next contract is.
Right.
So I don't think you're going to see a lot of people leaving to AEW, and I don't think they could sign everyone who would want to leave.
No.
It's going to be tough, but no matter what, WWE has badly handled this. But at the same time, I do understand their position on this one because the big issue is we come back to AJ Styles. When he was basically cutting down Heyman, right or wrong, I don't know a single person who's listening to this right now who could get away with a public forum like a WWE wrestler on Twitch and complain about a coworker or a supervisor and get away with it. I know if I use this podcast to crap on anyone from my work, not that I want to anyone, but if I wanted to, definitely there'd be repercussions. I'd have to be going to a meeting with HR. Everyone would have to understand that. The problem is, in this case, this wasn't about a place to air their grievances.
No.
Vince McMahon could have said is, you do that, any of you do this one more time, I will cut down your accounts. I'm not saying that's the right way, but that would have been a much more reasonable way to handle this.
Right.
But then it involves money. Now we're talking about people that are making money off their names in WWE, whether that's their official Twitch name or if it's because of their popularity as Zelina Vega.
Yeah.
Or Cesaro, because that's obviously not his real name either.
Right.
Or AJ Styles, even though it sounds like a real name, we know it's Alan John. So these people, if they're making their money knowing that it comes from their popularity in WWE, I can understand any company saying, I want a piece of that. I'm not saying it's right, but I understand it. So again, I get WWE's position. It's really how they handled it that's completely wrong. And that's where I think the pushback is going to come from.
I think we all get WWE's position because any company is going to want a slice of that pie.
Absolutely.
So nobody is shocked by that. It's just the handling of it. And here's the big thing here. Zelina Vega was fired for using Twitch and OnlyFans and was otherwise a model employee.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. I think we would have heard something by now. But
probably.
For that discretion, as far as we know, she was a model employee. Meanwhile,
quickly, that you also got to remember she was involved in that movie with Paige. So she played Paige. She was I don't know if friends is the right word, but she was.
No, I think she played AJ in that. Not Paige.
Sorry, yeah, AJ. Yeah. I never watched it. It's a WWE movie. I didn't watch it. But basically, the big key part of that one is who produced that one. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah,
I know he had a lot of involvement with her getting hired. I don't say he got her hired, but that connection that they made on the set was a big part of what attributed to her being hired. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I know he's not much of a wrestler these days, but I can't see Vince being stupid enough to think, I'm going to go piss off The Rock with a decision today.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a deal breaker there, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line for me, Zelina, as I was just saying, model employee as far as we know of, and got fired for using Twitch and OnlyFans. And not even, I know a lot of people like to use OnlyFans for explicit photos. Yeah. She was not doing that. She was posting cosplay photos and such. So she was
type of stuff that she was already showing on Instagram, but I guess she was going to do more of it for the extra income.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. So she's fired for that. And meanwhile, Matt Riddle, Velveteen Dream, Drake Wirtz, who has a whole lot of controversies right now, a bunch of the UK guys like Joe Coffey and Jordan Devlin, all who have some level of credible accusations of abuse against them, are all still there.
Right.
So you look at that, you look at that, and then you look at what happened to Zelina, and you're like, Twitch was a step too far, but the accusations against them,
Well, I think it's more you got to think of what could be more damaging to the company. And I understand these accusations are huge and can damage the company. But at the same time, they haven't yet. Whereas what Zelina, or more specifically AJ Styles, did with his Twitch account can damage the company, and definitely has. It's very minor. I don't think too many people care about what AJ says about Heyman. It's more of a talking point for idiots like you and I. But it's doesn't really affect the viewership for Raw if he says Heyman didn't treat me well or I didn't like him. It's definitely mishandled. I don't think anyone could argue that it was handled badly, but argue that it was handled well. It's just too bad to see. I think this means there's going to be a lot of changes, not just because of the American administration that's changing, but in just all sorts of influences. I think whether it's because Vince will end up, I don't know if retiring is going to be the right word, or moving it on to Triple H, Stephanie, whatever the plans are for Vince's future, I think that new ownership of WWE is going to have to listen to this, because there's no way they're the same people that have been backing off because they're fearful for their job. I think a couple of them will say, I'm going to take my chance with this new administration and see if I can air my grievances without getting punished the way Vince would have handled it.
Right. And the Screen Actors Guild is getting involved too now. We should mention that.
I don't know how, to me, when I read the report, it sounded like bluster, just something for them to get their name out. Because what you got to remember with a lot of these unions, it's not a WWE corporate business, but it's still a business. They're in they're trying to make money. And if they can make money by getting some wrestler percentages, we'll call it, they're going to go for it. But at the same time, if they see that they're going to be dealing with what was that term that a lot of the fans used to call Mr. McMahon? Something about a hole. Anyways, when they're dealing with Vince, who's acting like that, I think a lot of people might back off. I think it's nice to get their names in it. I think Andrew Yang's going to take advantage because he's definitely huge right now, whether it's because of the universal basic income he was promoting 2 years ago, or right now is pushing of UFC and WWE to properly pay their, I'll say performers, because I don't know if they're independent contractors for UFC, but whatever the case is, you're going to hear more and more people speak up. I just don't know how much it's going to matter.
Right. You know, in the end, this could all be fixed really simply. I mean, you look at AEW. I mean, AEW doesn't have a different system than WWE when you really look closely at it, but they allow their talent to do these third-party things and make extra cash on the side. They allow them to work indie dates, if they get it cleared through the office. It's a lot less restrictive. Like, if WWE were to do that, we would never hear about this. This would never be a story.
The one major difference is creatively on that one. I'm not talking about quality, but most of these people, if they, other than someone like an AJ Styles, the name that they're using and the character that they're using in WWE is different than what they could use in AEW and the independents. So I think that's where a lot of the issue would come from WWE's perspective. They've created the character Cesaro. They've created the idea that he's this international Swiss Superman or Swiss cyborg, whatever catchphrase that Corey Graves is using these days. And he's great, but now you strip away the Cesaro. I'm not saying he's suddenly going to suck. We all know Cesaro is never going to be terrible in the ring, but I do think it's going to matter less. And therefore that contribution from Vince McMahon and WWE will have an effect when they do go to the indie dates. Again, I'm not defending WWE here. It's just that because of that aspect of changing their characters, it's kind of hard. Go ahead.
Could, but you got to remember, Cesaro was once upon a time Claudio Castagnoli.
Right.
And that's not a name people don't remember. They will remember that name if he were to leave and go back to that on the indies. So,
a great example was Brody Lee.
More
people might know him
Moxley
as
as well.
Moxley's like another great one. Good point. Miro, I don't think anyone knew him ahead of WWE, but at the same time, we're in the era where we know enough about their real names because of social media. So Miroslav suddenly being Miro, not a shock. But everyone knows he's still Rusev. So, you know what I mean when I say that. Still, people are still thinking of as Rusev.
Yeah.
The best man. So I think the pushback on this one's going to be a lot bigger over time because of these administrative changes in the U.S. The influence of people like Andrew Yang, and then if the Screen Actors goes, I don't think that's going to matter too much, but it could. There's potential for them to really push the right buttons to get Vince to change, or in my opinion, more likely Triple H, if he is the one that eventually takes over, he's probably the one that's going to have to buckle under that pressure.
Yeah, Vince will pass the buck and let Hunter handle that one. I think this will definitely be a story we'll be talking about again for sure. 100%. I don't think this is going away.
No. But we spent 24 minutes talking about that. There has been some actual wrestling going on this week, and we have one of the big 4 pay-per-views coming up this weekend. So let's switch directions and let's change things up. We've been talking crap about Raw for the last few weeks, and now let's talk crap about Raw. So they did some
not getting better.
No. Well, they did some smart things. First off, I really want to help. I really want to promote the positive here. I feel like the New Day here, but them booking that title match a week in advance is, I don't know if I'm going to say it's AEW influence, but it's something that we see today more from AEW than any other promotion. NXT does it as well, and they usually do it pretty good. But for the WWE to promote this title match a week before Survivor Series to change what match will take place on the pay-per-view, and it's a pretty big, even though it's non-title and nothing's at stake, it's still a pretty big matchup to have Roman Reigns against whoever the Raw champion is going to be. You actually did me a favor just before we turned on the cameras here. You looked up that the ratings pretty much, they weren't enormous, but they went up a little bit and they stayed stronger for the 3rd hour than normal, correct?
Yeah. Yes. There was a drop, but it was not as big a drop. They've been dropping into the 1.4s, 1.5s. It stayed in the 1.7 range for
that's pretty good. That's pretty good considering. And I think that's because of that proper promotion. I understand it's the biggest match possible on this one brand, the real #1 contender against the real champion. And unless you're bringing back a Rock or a Lesnar, that's pretty much the biggest match you can give off on free TV. But they only gave it 1 week's notice. It's the 4th time over the last few months.
Yeah.
And I think that affected the quality, by the way. Before we get into what actually happened on Raw, the match was good, but it wasn't as good as most of the other matches we saw.
Right.
It was just well promoted. It was in a highlight position as the true main event. They built it up throughout the 3 hours of Raw. I think that aspect, whether it delivered or not, obviously is opinion, but the smart booking of actually booking a week in advance, promoting it throughout the 3 hours really helped out the rest of the show. It's just too bad the rest of the show, the bed, except for a pretty good tag team title match where that also had some stakes involved with who might end up in Survivor Series to take on the champions of the other brand, where we had the New Day take on the Hurt Business. I was really impressed with the Hurt Business, but as I'm sure anyone
You're always impressed with
I'm
them,
always impressed with the Hurt Business. They can't do any wrong right now with me, except they lost.
Other than that dive sequence too, that Cedric had.
Well, look, I don't mind sloppiness once in a while, and at least he still connected and followed it up properly. It's not like he missed it the way the Bucks did about a month ago and then celebrated when my ankle touched his head and all of a sudden he fell. Fuck you, Bucks. Anyways, we're going to keep on Raw for this one. I think that promotion was pretty good. It's just too bad the middle structure, everything between that first 10 minutes to the last 30 minutes, there's really nothing of Raw that was of note. They had terrible, terrible matches other than the tag match, terrible promotion for Survivor Series, terrible booking for anyone involved, terrible humor when they tried to be humorous, which WWE does not have a strong record with.
No.
Just such a weak show sandwiched between 2 good matches and good promotion to get to that one main event match.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously this show was going to live or die on that main event. And I think it was pretty clear because I saw that Drew was on Smackdown and confronted Roman Reigns. And at that point, it was like, well, they aren't doing that if it's going to be Orton versus Reigns. So I figured he was going to win. I mean, obviously promoting it over a week is good. It's better than what they usually do.
Correct.
It's not as good. I mean, we've seen now Omega and Moxley, they're building that up over 3 weeks, which is
and we're going to get to that as well.
Yeah, we're going to get into that later. That's very good. I'd maybe like to see a little bit more of that from Raw, but this is a step in the right direction. I think the result was correct. We've talked about that. Drew should be the champion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he should have ever lost it. And that leads into the criticism part. Why did he lose it?
I don't know if it's just faith or lack of it. I think that they really decided this last minute. I think they were going to go with Orton as champion for a few months. And then they realized getting into Survivor Series, first off, I don't think WWE plans very well in advance. I'm sure they have a good idea what they want to do for WrestleMania, and they probably have a good idea who's going to win the Rumble to get to WrestleMania. And I'm sure they have an idea who's going to win the Rumble right now. I believe that, and I don't have any proof of it. It's just what I believe. But I think where they got it all messed up and proven to be badly planned is with the draft. When they set up that draft, it was almost announced last minute. The rosters were changed and really, I don't know, felt like not much really happened.
No.
And I think they really decided, well, let's move the title to Orton and then build Drew up to get the title back at WrestleMania, hopefully in front of live fans, if that's what Vince is thinking, whatever the case is. And then they realize, well, we're 2 weeks away from Survivor Series and this match sucks. Let's put the title back on Drew. That's my gut feeling of what happened.
I mean, it could be, I guess it could be they're trying to stack Orton's reigns up so he can catch Ric Flair for the most world title reigns of all time.
Or John Cena.
Yeah, well, it could be anything. I just, you know, I'm happy Drew had it back, but at the end of it, I was just like, then what was the point of all this? Because I can't really see one. Yeah, there was nobody Orton doesn't benefit from it. Drew doesn't really benefit from it. You know, maybe if it had been a little longer, he would have. But
I think the real way they could have done this is, unfortunately, they don't have a lot of talent that could really be a threat to Drew or Orton right now, other than the Fiend, and no one wants to really see that. Let's be honest.
Oh God, I saw a GIF of that match between the Miz and the Fiend last night. I mean, it's been a long time since I nearly projectile vomited there, man. Oh my God.
You look like a Team America GIF.
Oh God, yes. It might have been since that scene. I can't ever look at that GIF. It's gross. Oh man. That was just awful. And yeah, imagine if the Fiend is the next guy for Drew. Like, I mean, the buildup might be fine, but then they got to get in the ring, and it's just like, oh.
Well, even in the ring, I think Wyatt has the potential. He's shown more as Bray Wyatt than the Fiend that he can have a good match. It's never going to be a 5-star worker, but he can have a good match. He just hasn't shown it as the Fiend lately. And I think the buildup would have been fine, but I think WWE books themselves in a corner with the Fiend because it's really hard to make him the Fiend and then have him lose. You know, that was a big part of what built up The Undertaker. They kept him away from the title for so long. I know he won the title in 91, but he held it for less than, I think it was 4 days until he won it back or lost it to controversy. And then someone else, Ric Flair won it at the Rumble a few months later.
With a tear in his eye.
There you go. He ended up staying away from the title picture for another 5 years. And I think that's something they need to do with the Fiend, because with The Undertaker out of the title picture, he could win matches, or he could lose big matches without losing mystique because he got buried by Yokozuna and a bunch of other stuff. It was fun at the time, but you look back and you wonder, what was wrong with me loving this at 13 years old? But basically, the Fiend, he needs to keep some of those wins so he can have those special powers over his opponents. Him losing is not going to help with that, and that's why we have to get these silly segments and bad matches, in my opinion. We're going off track there, but basically, Bray should be away from the title to rebuild his persona, and then maybe at a WrestleMania, that's when he decides, I am going to go after the title, and people will think, well, that's a big deal because he's been undefeated and squashing or demolishing people mentally for about a year.
Right.
But if he's going to lose every 3 months when he gets into the title picture, like we saw against Braun Strowman, or I should say Roman Reigns in the triple threat after SummerSlam, then who's going to be scared of the Fiend anymore?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty much done with that guy until I see a long-term proof that it's turned around there.
There's some good aspects to the act, but it's very hit or miss, and the amount of potential there is makes it disappointing when it misses, because there's really so much more they could be doing, and when it goes wrong, it just feels so much more deflating. I will compare this to music quickly, or maybe movies for anyone. If you're a huge fan of a band, you love everything they do, and then all of a sudden they put out a stinker of a song, that becomes one of your most hated songs because you had this excitement, you're expected this delivery from this band, and all of a sudden they put out a stinker, and it's, man, that's really deflating.
Oh, that's been the Killers ever since Hot Fuzz. Sam's Town. Hot Fuzz was good. Everything after that, ugh.
Okay. I only know 2 songs from them. They're not my style. They're not heavy enough for me.
No.
But basically, when it comes down to wrestling, we know the Fiend can do a lot of great things, and then it just craps the bed, and therefore it deflates, and it's so much more disappointing. The only thing that's really positive right now is it's very intriguing to have Alexa Bliss in the mix, more because she's a great performer as well, an on-screen character, and also not the best in-ring worker. They make a lot of their segments work, but at the same time, they have to get in the ring eventually, and as you saw against The Miz...
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, some of that is on The Miz there too, but I've at least seen The Miz have, Daniel decent Bryan. Matches. In the past few years. Daniel Bryan is like the Miz and Bray Wyatt whisperer. Now that I think of it, he manages to have great matches with them.
Both. Good point.
With them every time. In the end, though, getting back to Drew, I'm happy he's the champion again. I think that was the right move.
Right.
I don't know who he challenges next, but you can at least figure that out.
Well, I think they're leaning towards Sheamus being in there, and personally, I don't think it's going to be I can't think of it as a big drawing match, but that's going to be a match I want to watch. I can't wait to see these 2 bruisers go at each other. I wish it wasn't under the WWE umbrella, because it's going to be a PG version of what they can do. But man, those are 2 guys that if they were all no holds barred for real, not WWE's pretend no holds barred, they could really go and deliver a very good match.
It'll be, when they have the match, it'll be very good. It's the stuff leading up to it that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So far, so good, though. They had a good segment where Sheamus introduced a sword from McIntyre's history for the family, and that motivated him to come out with this sword and the kilt for his match, and he ended up winning it. So there's a good foundation for what will obviously be a split and a feud down the line. It's just too bad it's probably going to happen and fast forward in 2 weeks from now, we're going to have them face off at TLC or whatever it is.
Right.
So you told me before we turned on the cameras, you don't want to talk about Retribution. So let's keep it to a minimum. We saw Mia Yim attack Dana Brooke. I'm going to skip over it so you don't have to comment on it whatsoever. She attacked Dana Brooke. Mandy Rose was hurt last week, apparently, from an altercation with Nia Jax, who didn't really look to be at fault. I know everyone's going to blame Nia quickly, but she just moved Mandy, and Mandy took the ropes badly and landed and tore her shoulder in some way. So apparently they had to remove them from the Survivor Series match. And how did they just replace them? Oh, well, Adam Pearce just said, it's going to be these 2, Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans is going to be the new partners for the women's match. You could hear all that emotion in my voice. That's how much emotion was shown in the booking of this. It was terrible. Last minute sloppiness. I can't wait for Bianca Belair to just squash everyone.
She better squash everybody. Who else who's on Bianca's team?
Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, who actually is very good, but she's not going to get the push that Bianca's going to get over the next few months.
No.
So I have a feeling Bianca's going to be the sole survivor still, because I don't want to say we predicted, but we talked about the possibility of Charlotte coming back in and backing up Team Raw. I think it's obvious now with the team that we see, it's going to be the Bianca show, and she's just going to crush everyone somehow.
Oh, it better be. I know Chelsea Green was supposed to be in it, and then shocker of all shockers, when you don't have somebody work for months, they get back in the ring. What happens? Injured immediately.
It's going to be a problem that we're going to see quite a bit right now, because they're not getting their reps in. They're not doing the house shows under the WWE banner. There's no house shows. They're not going to get all these practice shows and runs in. And then for the independents, they don't have the option. AEW guys are allowed to do independent shows, but it's not like there's a lot of options around these days. So I have a feeling we're going to see more and more injuries, because we're seeing people only in the ring once every 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Yeah, but Chelsea should have been on TV. Like, there is no reason she should have been at home for, I think it had been June since she last worked.
I think it was actually earlier than that, but
yeah, it might have been longer.
I don't have a problem. I'll always defend the idea of keeping someone off TV instead of putting them on TV with no direction. I'm not saying WWE has great ideas for Chelsea Green right now, but I'll always respect the idea that, look, we want to do something special with her. Let's hold off until we have that available for her, rather than just, well, you know what, we got to put some women in this match. Let's just throw Chelsea Green on TV. I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, that was a last minute thing. They apparently were like, well, she lives close by. We could bring her in and we'll put her in after not using her for months and give her a push. And, that's now out the window. She's too talented that you should be able to have come up with some sort of direction for her all these months. I think so.
I'm not, in theory, I agree. I think WWE needs to start a women's show, almost like what they do with 205 Live. And I think because they have a very deep roster, I think WWE's roster for women is very impressive when you consider NXT as well, because you have someone like Chelsea Green who they wanted to move away from NXT. And then she kind of, I don't want to say flounders, but she was off TV because they don't know what to do with someone like her. She's talented. She can deliver on the mic. We've seen that from Impact. She has the ability to be, I don't want to say the star, but a star.
She's really underrated.
Yeah, very underrated. Good point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's just, I think it's tough for them to find a place for someone because they don't want to get it wrong. And you take a look at Bianca Belair. She debuted She debuted on the main roster after WrestleMania this year. Does anyone remember anything she did of note on Raw until she got drafted to SmackDown?
No.
She was directionless. She got involved with Zelina Vega at one point when they were feuding between those two tag teams.
Yeah, when the poisoning happened.
Yeah, which, okay, not the best story, but at least it gave her a purpose. It didn't lead to anything, a match on pay-per-view. There was no Zelina-Bianca match that we were striving for. It might have been on a forgettable Raw and probably was under 3 minutes if it did happen. So she did nothing of note. They just wanted to throw her on Raw. She had no direction. In the end, it didn't amount to anything. So I think Chelsea Green being held off for that long, not really a bad thing. But throwing her on without getting her any reps, not saying, why don't you go work NXT, the Performance Center for a couple of weeks, then we'll get you on SmackDown. That would have been a lot smarter.
I just think they have so much time that there would have been a way you could have fit her onto one of these shows and had something for her. Now, granted, we both have bemoaned WWE's creative, so they probably wouldn't have. But in theory, you could have had her on a show and you could have given her a direction, and she's talented enough to be there. See, the difference between her and Bianca is someone you knew they were always going to be invested in because she's a homegrown talent.
True.
She's one of the few rare success stories of someone who was built from scratch at the PC. It has turned out to be a really good performer.
I think for the women's division, it's not nearly as rare. I think Braun is the only one you can really say for the men's division. But women, they have Charlotte, for example, who was just built out of nothing. So they have some successes with the women, but not nearly as much as they should have.
That's only two, though. All the other women pretty much came from the indies. Chelsea is, to me, and I think you'll disagree, but she's been somebody who I've thought for a long time. She's there because she was on All In, and they didn't want her to end up in AEW.
It's possible.
When the time came.
I think a lot
of people in WWE are there because they didn't want them going anywhere else.
It's not that I dispute that, but I think there's a lot of assumption from fans thinking, oh, AEW wanted them, that's why WWE. I don't think that's the answer for every one of them. I'm sure for some it is, but they have their own interests at mind in the end. So there's got to be a purpose. They have a very deep NXT women's division. I think adding to that is always going to be a good thing. So I don't know. Either way, it doesn't really matter why she was hired. They should be putting her to use properly, and throwing her on SmackDown randomly probably wasn't the best idea.
We are in 100% agreement there. Yeah.
So nothing else really happened on Raw that was of note, in my opinion. It just building up to Survivor Series that's happening this Sunday. And all those super exciting matchups with a whole bunch of stakes are not happening. What we're instead seeing is, you know what? It's going to still be a fun show because these matchups are going to be entertaining. But WWE is not really known for just throwing out good wrestling. They are known for building a story towards the match. I'm not saying the stories are good, but that's really what they concentrate on. There's no stories here of note. It's just these two people are really good. Let's see what they can do in the ring. I'm hoping something happens, but probably there won't.
Dude, the story is brand supremacy.
Shut up.
Brand supremacy. These guys are going to fight for the brand. They've been on a whole 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Sasha's going to fight Asuka because that's a really fresh matchup in 2020. We're going to see the New Day against the Street Profits, which is basically New Day 2.0 in a lot of people's minds.
Hmm.
And while I think both teams can have good matches because they're both babyface fun teams, I don't think they're going to really have a great competitive matchup. I think it's just going to be fine.
Maybe they'll switch titles again.
Shut up. We can also see the possibility of I don't want to say heel turn, but we might see aggression out of one of them. That I would like to see, but I don't expect that. Either way, Survivor Series will probably be a good show wrestling-wise. I don't think it's going to matter in the end. The only thing that I really got to give praise for their booking of Survivor Series was the way it did lead to these pretty interesting TV stake matches where who's going to be champion to face Roman Reigns. I think there's other ways you can tell these good stories, and WWE really crapped the bed again overall, but at least the show had some intrigue on Monday, and then obviously on Friday we're going to see that for SmackDown also. But enough WWE. We talked about wanting to get to AEW Dynamite. A lot of big news there as well, because they announced a pretty huge TV main event title match with Kenny Omega taking on Jon Moxley. You said in 3 weeks?
It is on December 2nd, so I believe that's 3 weeks from tomorrow. It could only actually be 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is a huge match.
Huge.
We both pictured that, even when we talked about predictions before Full Gear, you mentioned you thought Omega was going to win, and then it would be the next pay-per-view title match. And now we're getting it in less than a month from, or I get about a month away from when that title contention was decided.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts
on free TV?
On free TV. So what are your thoughts on that being on free TV on Dynamite in 3 weeks' time?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first saw the announcement, my reaction was, that's not what I would do.
Right.
I am old school in that regard, where when you have a match that big, you don't give it away for free. You put it on the pay-per-view. The positive is that they are at least building it up over several weeks. Right. It's not something that's just going to be a week from now. They're building to it. They're going to have a contract signing on Wednesday. So tomorrow, so they're going to have some more, storytelling to it.
I don't know if it's WWE ruining that, but contract signings just suck. I trust AEW to do a better job than WWE would, but man, that's not exciting to carry.
Their contract signings have been better than WWE's. Nobody's flipping the table or anything like that. Although, I hear you. Again, like I always say, I don't care where the idea came from. I just care if it's done well. True. And I think they'll do it well and such. And they'll have more stuff next week and separate from this as well. So I like that. I like that they're at least building to it. There is the possibility that Jon Moxley is going over to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom.
Right.
And if that is the case, then doing the match now would be necessary so they can get it out of the way. For all I know, they're also going to do the match at the pay-per-view too, and this is part of a larger story that the finish is going to tell, that either it's going to go to a draw or there's something else that's going to happen. I don't know. Again, though, would I have done it? No. I would have waited until the pay-per-view. I would have put a buffer in at first. Do I think it's going to be a massive deal in the long run? Probably not. I think they're going to do a huge number that night.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think they'll beat him? I would be surprised if NXT does something to counter it, but I still think that million mark will probably do well.
NXT actually can't really, because TakeOver is that weekend.
Okay.
So they can't, unleash all their bullets because they have to save it for their big show there. Although at first I did think that NXT Starrcade was going to be that night when I saw that match
could still happen.
And NXT Starrcade also by the pay-per-view Sunday. I think they're going to do over 1 million. That's like the biggest match they can do. I mean, the first one, everybody loved the first one. Right. Omega is hot again. Moxley has been hot the whole year. He is not
PWI #1 wrestler.
Yeah, I think he's going to be wrestler of the year to many people in the end. I think this is going to be a huge event.
So where do you think they're going to go? Do you think that it will lead to a rematch at the pay-per-view? Is that your prediction?
Here's the other positive thing. I have no idea, because if it was at the pay-per-view, I'd be like, Omega's winning.
Right.
Now that it's on the TV show and you have the option to revisit this match again in February, if you do a draw or something, which that's easier to do because they're not going to have a full house of people there. So people aren't going to boo the draw like they always do.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I could see it going either way. I could see Omega winning it early. I could see Moxley. I don't think Moxley will beat him clean.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you think the story's going to continue. How do you think this will affect Triple Mania? Because as we saw today, Laredo Kid, he's called out Omega. We know that's been a match they've been talking about for a while because Omega, he's their mega champion. Is that the name of it?
Yes, he's the mega champion of AAA, yeah.
And that's an event rumored to take place in December. How do you think that might affect this?
It's in fact rumored to take place that weekend as well.
There you go.
I have no idea. I mean,
I got to give AEW credit for switching things up and making it exciting, because when you have only 3 or 4 pay-per-views a year, you have to do these specials on TV, in my opinion. And AEW, again, I'm not a fan in general, but their booking is so smart. And I think that show is going to be really well done. I think they're going to promote it well into that show. And I do trust you're on the right track. There's something planned long-term for that pay-per-view. Most likely a rematch makes sense. Either way, this is going to be pretty darn cool.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be like a Goldberg, Hollywood Hogan type deal. And you know that's not just going to be the only match. They're going to load that show. There will be more stuff. I am certain the Bucks will probably do something. Cody will do something on that show. It's going to be pretty big. And I mean, if you think about it, last year AEW has pretty consistently been a lot stronger in the ratings than NXT, except for the winter last year, the end of November into December. Some of that was because NXT was involved in the Survivor Series stuff, and they got the boost of that and the main roster people. Some of it was because AEW kind of got they cooled off. Everybody remembers that Dark Order, thing at the end of December that a lot of people did not like, with the fake punches and everything.
Yeah. Well, they have a lot more momentum right now, whether their ratings are above that level, because it was exciting at the beginning of the Wednesday Night War, I should say. It kind of leveled off, and then AEW really improved and got consistent. So I think that's a big reason why they've been beating NXT. And it's not to say NXT's been terrible, but that booking in advance, I think, counts for so much. We know what's going to, by the end of tomorrow's Dynamite, we're going to know at least a half of what's going to be on the next Dynamite.
Right.
And that's going to get people tuning in. Oh, they're going to remember to tune in the next week. And then TNT as a network is well promoting them as well. They've got a good social media presence. NXT, what they've announced for tomorrow night's NXT is a pretty huge title match and then an announcement from the champion. That's it. And we're 24 hours away. Whereas AEW, they've already announced a tag title match for the AEW title. Well, the Bucks against Top Flight.
Top Flight, Airwolf and Angel Dorado.
There you go. Yeah. We have the NWA women's title match where Serena Deeb's going to defend against Thunder Rosa, who also has a match on Dark tonight against my favorite, Lindsay Snow.
Yeah, Bloodsport.
There you go. Yeah, anyone who's watched Bloodsport, check out Lindsay Snow on that one. There's some mid-card matches, but still interesting people, where you got Orange Cassidy against Kip Sabian, and then you have Brian Cage.
I don't know about that one, Chief. I don't know about that one.
I'm not an Orange Cassidy fan, but I know he's a name in AEW, and a lot of the fans are interested in that.
It's not him I'm worried about there.
Well, the Kipper.
The Kipper. I mean, he's so entertaining on like Being the Elite and Sammy Guevara's blog, and then he's just there on the TV show.
I don't get it with him at all. And then they have Brian Cage and Ricky Starks taking on Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin. So they have a really good roundup show, and a lot of this was announced last week and now they're just building up to it. So AEW is going to always win in the ratings for their promotion alone. Whether you're into it or not is a different story, but obviously they're going to do a very good job for this title match in 3 weeks' time as well.
Right. I think in the end, because they did so poorly last December in the ratings, part of the reason you're also seeing these big matches now is because they want to end the year hot. So they're going to do bigger shows throughout the month. And I can't fault them for that. Now, would I have saved Moxley Omega 2 for the pay-per-view? In the end, yes, but that's because, I'm a sucker for that sort of thing long builds to a huge match on a big stage.
But that's also not knowing what the direction is for this story. There might be a very logical reason that it's on TV first and then to a pay-per-view later on that we can't think of right now.
I expect there will be a logical thing because aside from the Bucks FTR build, everything they've done has been logical pretty much. So I expect that they will have something, but we're talking about right now, and right now, just me being me, I would have saved it until then. But I'm sure they've got something cooked up good.
For sure.
And I mean, hey, I'm not going to say no to the match. I mean, it's like, I used to complain privately to you about all the times like WWE gave away like AJ versus Randy Orton on TV for the first time. It's like, why are they not doing that on pay-per-view? And then I would think, well, if you're a fan, you're not going to complain about that. No. You're not going to worry about the business thing. That's for them to figure out.
And they, obviously, as you can tell from WWE, they never did.
No.
What else is happening this Wednesday night quickly is there's the Mlw Restart. Now, I know it's a lesser known promotion. I don't think I'm going to sway too many people to give that a watch, but it is going to be on before NXT or Dynamite. So if you want to give some extra wrestling on Wednesday night a shot, they are going to have that pretty huge main event of Davey Boy Smith Jr., so Harry Smith, as you might remember him, against Jacob Fatu, who is from the Fatu family. He's the heavyweight champion of LMLW. We've both been very impressed with both of them, and if you've been watching New Japan, you've seen some of Davey Boy really being excelling, really excelling over the years, especially tag team partners with Lance Archer. There's also their middleweight, which is basically a cruiserweight title between Brian Pillman Jr. taking on champion Myron Reed. So a lot of good wrestling on Wednesday night, no matter what show from the Wednesday Night War that you follow. There's also we'll call it pre-show almost, of MLW that's going to deliver also.
Yeah, those two matches, I love Myron Reed. Yeah. Love that kid. He's great. That match, and Pillman he's come a long way.
Definitely.
You could see that if you've watched AEW Dark. He's a lot better than he was when he first showed up there. That should be good. I've been a big believer in Davey Boy Jr., David Hart Smith, Harry Smith, whatever you want to call him, ever since he first showed up in WWE all those years ago when he was just a kid.
And he's grown and improved so much since.
Yes, and Fatu he's the guy who should be holding that belt. So those are two really good matches there. And to help segue into our next thing, that main event is very interesting because what's going to happen with Davey Boy, because he's soon going to be hitting the open market, much like some other people from another company.
That's right. Probably my favorite alternative to WWE has been Impact over the last, I'll say, year and a half. And Impact, they just did their final tapings, and a lot of, I don't know about a lot, but some big names are rumored to have their contracts expired by the end of this year. And if it's their final tapings of the year, this might end up being their final appearance. We're talking about Ethan Page and Taya Valkyrie. Those are the big two names. Is there anyone I'm missing?
Sammy Callahan as well, I believe.
I don't really care about him, but it's a big name. I won't deny that. I don't know if it's because John Morrison is in WWE and because of the women's roster between NXT and main roster. I think Taya might end up getting a strong offer there. I'm not saying she'll take it, but I think she'll get a pretty strong offer. I don't know because she has a lot of ties to Mexico, that would probably cut into that. I know she can't really work Mexico all that often right now, but she probably still wants to have that ability.
She's actually AAA's women's champion right now.
Yeah,
just remember that.
It's going to be a little bizarre, but I have a feeling that might be the big offer she gets, but she might want her freedom and go elsewhere. And then Ethan Page, he's been rumored to go to AEW for quite a bit. And I'm a big fan of his. He's great on the mic. I don't know if he's MJF level great, but he's really good on the mic. At the same time, I wonder if he's someone who would kind of flounder in AEW because they have so many guys that are ready to go to that next level. They're going to have to start picking and choosing who gets those types of pushes. And I don't know if Ethan Page would get the cut if he was joined into that roster as well.
I think he would, because Cody loves him. And if Cody loves you, he will work with you often. So I think Ethan Page would be in line there. And that would also be, bringing him in would be a long-term idea, because at some point they would want Alexander as well.
if you're more of an in-ring worker fan, you want Josh Alexander in that promotion. That guy is amazing in the ring. We saw him do some great stuff at Bloodsport, for example. Ethan Page carries the team on the mic, whereas it's almost like a Hart Foundation thing where Jim Neidhart, he did most of the mic work of that team, but Bret Hart was the in-ring worker. But Ethan Page is very good in the ring. He's not Bret Hart, but he's very good.
Right. I think in the long run, they're thinking, we want to get both of them. Obviously, Alexander's contract is not up right now, so that's why he's not going anywhere. But they're going to want the North. Mm-hmm. I mean, that tag division is already the best in wrestling. Why would you not want to make it even better with arguably the best team in wrestling? They've been tremendous in Impact.
And just imagine a year from now, I don't know when Alexander's contract is up, but let's say it's a year from now. There's probably going to be some of the teams that are in the mix now that might have petered out. I don't want to say they've been jobbed out or mistreated or anything like that. But some people are going to move up, some are going to move down. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need to mix that up. And adding the North as they are now into that mix would already be a draw. Imagine Ethan Page becoming a name in AEW and then getting his dream tag team partner to join as well, fighting against the Bucks and whoever else might be in the division at the time. Very intriguing idea. And if you've never seen the North, they're a lot like FTR as a solid old school type tag team, but with even better mic work, in my opinion, with Ethan Page.
Oh God, so much better.
I like FTR on the mic, by the way. They're not bad at all, but Ethan Page is very, very good. Very underrated.
He had a promo on Bound for Glory just in the middle of the show out of nowhere where I was half paying attention and then I was just glued to him.
Yeah.
He was so captivating doing that. Yeah, I think in the long run, they're both going to wind up there. I think Page will go there first. And he does have single star potential based off his mic work. And there's so many good workers in AEW that even him just being more on the good than great end of the spectrum, he'll have great matches just because of all the other talent.
Right.
But I think they both wind up there. I think Callahan either goes there or he just stays in Impact. He's not going back to WWE. We saw how that went. He's not doing that.
I can't see them wanting to offer him anything, nor do I see him wanting to go there. No. So both aren't likely.
He does have a relationship with Moxley too. That could be an interesting dynamic, an interesting feud. And Taya is, her husband is in WWE, obviously, but she's got close friends in AEW. She's appeared on Being the Elite a lot. I think
she'd be a great asset. Right now, their women's division is one division they really need to build up, and Taya Valkyrie would be a huge asset.
She would walk in there and immediately be the top star, pretty much. Just on the charisma alone, would be the most charismatic
name value there. And charisma, because there's no one that really has the name value. Arguably, maybe these NWA recruits, but I don't think you can say NWA is bigger than a AAA women's champion or someone who's been such a star in Impact over the last few years.
Also for me, as a Lucha Underground fan, it would be nice to continue to rebuild that LU roster in AEW, considering all the other alumni that are there. But, in the end, Taya, just like Mundo, I love both of them. They were so loyal to LU when they didn't have to be. I always appreciated that as a fan. They always gave their best. That's why, I've said it before, most of the times when people go to WWE, I groan. With Mundo, I was like, good for him. He got his money. Maybe it doesn't work out, but, he deserves a break. It would be the same for her. Yeah. I don't know what her prospects would be there. I think they would be better in AEW. It would not be as steep a hill to climb because there's fewer talent there. Hey, if that's what she wants to do, she's got so much charisma. I'm going to regret saying this, but it's hard for me to believe it could go wrong. And now a year from now, we're going to be sitting here going,
why did she sign with Smackdown?
Where did it all go wrong?
That, by the way, this WrestleTakesMania podcast, we're going to branch into where did it all go wrong. That's going to be a sequel that we're going to do elsewhere at some other time. Speaking of some other time, we're going to have to wrap things up. We got a good host of shows tomorrow. I know we mentioned MLW. We've mentioned Dynamite. There's NXT. So wrestling on Wednesdays really is synonymous right now. You can't go to whatever show you choose or try to watch all three when you can. We got SmackDown coming up on Friday. Nothing major booked as far as I can remember.
That's all right. Roman Reigns is there. We don't need to know anything else. Roman Reigns is there. And as far as I'm concerned, SmackDown, they may not have anything else. It doesn't matter right now.
He is demolishing when it comes as champion. And I think you said it great last week, where you have such a strong story, it can carry the rest of the show. And thankfully, none of the show is nearly as bad as what we've been feeling about Raw, because even I know Carmella and Sasha's not getting the rave reviews from online fans, but it's still a lot more exciting than anything we're seeing on Raw in the women's division, because Sasha's been very good with her feud with Bayley, and Carmella, at least she's a new version of herself. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but it's fresh. It's different. So we'll see on that.
I do worry a little bit, because they've taken the Sasha Bayley thing away, and they've taken because Seth is now, because Becky is about to have her kid, mazel tov to both of them. He's about to take his leave. So there goes, they had 3 big stories. 2 of them were good. One of them was Ray, Seth, Buddy Murphy, and Ray's daughter. And now 2 of them are gone, and you're just left with the Roman thing. One is addition by subtraction, I think, but now you're down to just one big story. And while I think that's still going to make the show better than Raw, because it's just well done, it is going to be interesting to see how they fill the gaps now that they're missing 2 of the 3 things that were really making the show, hum.
I think a big part of it will be this coming Friday. The one match they have booked was Murphy, who might be called Buddy again at some point, but right now he's not Buddy or Guy or friend. He's going to be Murphy taking on Seth Rollins, and if Seth Rollins is on his way out, he's probably going to put him over. And whether they'll do something right with Murphy or not, we really don't know. It's hard to predict with WWE, but that could be something. We'll see. So either way, SmackDown should be interesting leading into Survivor Series. While there's no stakes at Survivor Series, we're pretty much guaranteed a good wrestling show. And hopefully on Monday, I don't even want to finish that statement, but we'll have Drew as champion at least. So that's a bonus to Monday Night Raw. So we'll see.
Hey, he might lose that belt on Monday.
He might. Yeah.
The Miz might be champion on Monday.
Why'd you ruin this for me?
It just popped into my head.
So a lot of good wrestling coming up as always. So we're very excited for this. Thank you very much, Eric, once again for being the cult icon of our show.
Oh yes, me and the Batman bobblehead doll here. Very happy to be here.
My superhero of fame with mask is Jason over there, wearing my Sleepaway Camp hat over here, my Tommaso Ciampa shirt. Thank